This Shabbat, we begin Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, and Rashi's first comment on the book tells us a number of lessons. This book begins, these are the words that Moshe addressed to all Israel on the other side of the Jordan, through the wilderness and the Arava, near Suf, between Paran and Tophel, Lavan v'chatzirot v'di zahav. So there's some geographic identification that takes place. These words of Moshe, these final speeches of Moshe that comprise the majority of Sefer Devarim, they were given at a specific place. And what is a specific place? What are these? Why and how does the Torah locate this moment in such a way? Rashi says that, following Chazal, based on our rabbis, that these places are allusions to Jewish history, and specifically to events in Jewish history where we angered God. And so, for example, Di Zahav is a reference to the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf. And so, too, the other locations are episodes that we know about from early in the Torah where we angered God in some way. And that makes sense because we know that a substantial percentage of Sefer Devarim, of the speeches of Moshe, his historical recapitulation of episodes we know about earlier, are with a real focus on rebuke and chastisement, so that hopefully the next generation will not repeat the mistakes of the prior generation, of their parents and of their grandparents. And Rashi tells us that this rebuke is delivered with some subtlety. Okay, because these are words of reproof and rebuke, and he's enumerating here all the places where they provoked God to anger. Therefore, he suppresses all mentions of the matters in which they sinned. Lefikach satam et hadvarim. He is obscure. He obfuscates. Satam, like it's the opposite of specific and particular. Vizkiram beremes. Okay, these places, these episodes are only alluded to through hints. Why? Mifnei kvodan shel Yisrael, out of regard for Israel's honor. So there are several lessons that we can learn from this Rashi. I want to focus on two of them. The first is just like a basic comment about psychology. If you want to offer rebuke, especially in a public way, it's effective and appropriate and ethical to do so with some amount of subtlety. If you kind of lay out black and white and great gory detail the things that someone did wrong, and you do so in a public setting especially, it's very hard for there to be a positive outcome, right? If people had the self-awareness to be able to kind of hear that kind of rebuke, they probably wouldn't have done the things wrong in the first place, okay? And so there's the subtlety and the context of, offer rebuke. If someone did something wrong, there's a value at times to offer reproof and rebuke, but it has to be done in a way that respects the honor and the dignity of the person rebuking, certainly to be effective, and I think also in order for that rebuke to be delivered in an ethical way, and that has to do with whether it's public or private, and that has to do with the tone as well, and Rashi is telling us that as well. But there's another lesson of Rashi in that if you look at the broader context of Rashi's comment, what we see, and this was noted by, I learned this from Professor Avram Grossman. I don't know if he's the first to notice this. I don't recall if he's the first to notice this. Every single one of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, all of the 5 books of the Torah, begin with a comment by Rashi that speaks in some positive way about the Jewish people. Rashi didn't sit down to write a comment on Sefer Devarim or Sefer Midbar or Vayikra or Shemot or Bereshit. All of his commentaries on the 5 books of the Torah begin something nice and sweet about the Jewish people. And it's so meaningful when you think about all the violence and hatred that the Jewish people were subject to in the time of Rashi, and the murder and the Crusades and things that he experienced in his time. And he was going to comment on the Torah in a different way, that his Torah commentary was a book of love. And I think it's not just a reaction to anti-Semitic violence. I think it's also a statement about education. Education has to come from a place of love. Torah education has to come from a place of Avat Yisrael, of some love for the Jewish people and for our struggles to live up to the demands of the Torah, and that love is a foundation of all education. So all of us in some way are educators, whether it's within our families or amongst our friend groups or whatever context in which we exercise leadership and have some influence over others. And the education that we do not just rebuke, but just education more broadly has to come from a foundation of love. That has to be the animation of the Torah's teaching that we do in our families, amongst our friends, and in our communities. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom as we head into Shabbat Chazon, this final Shabbat before Tisha B'Av, which is also a time where we need to recenter love as a foundation of what it means to be Jewish. Love for one another, which is, and love for God, which are both mirrors of one another, have to be the foundation of what it means to be Jewish and to have a relationship with the Torah. Shabbat Shalom.